Welcome back. Episode 3, Psychogeographies with Dakota Blue. I am stoked to be here. Thank you for tuning in. This is Sight and Sound, a Living Atlas with Kylie Stokes. That is me. This is my project I've been working on for about 10 months. And it's slowly coming together. I've been doing a lot of side quests along the way, gathering insights and personal transformation over time. This is what it's really all about. So, I'm stoked. This is a great episode. It's really exciting. I find personal narratives to be thrilling. I love them. I love collecting them. I love hearing about them. I love learning from them. I think it inspires me as an artist. It inspires me as a thinker, as a doer and actor in the world. And now, all that said, I am talking to Dakota Blue, who is a musician and a multimedia artist based in Los Angeles. It's our third Los Angeles-based artist, which is becoming a theme. Must be, because the people in Los Angeles are very excited about sensory geography. Thank you for that. We talk a lot about psychogeographies, which is a term that comes from situationist theory. It's like an artist movement from the 60s, 50s, 60s in Paris. If you don't know about the situationists, you should. I recommend doing some research. It's really inspiring. It's a really cool artist resistance group. And the way that they speak and think and write about place and experience and artist expression is really moving to me. It was something that we spoke a lot about when I was an anthropology student. I took urban anthropology classes and stuff, and my mentor was the professor. This was also a class where we learned a lot about city geography, but the space in between. The idea of what constructs a space and what makes the meaning of the space, and how do people imagine that space. And that's sort of where this project is moving from, the same essence, trying to capture the essence. So keep in mind, these interviews are narrative based. They're not meant to be theory heavy. That's not what this is for. This is not a theory heavy conversation. My conversation with Dakota about psychogeographies is in regards to how it has helped shape his personal artistic practice and perception and experience in Los Angeles. So, yeah, you should keep that in mind, because if you're a psychogeographies freak and you love psychogeographies and you're obsessed and you've read all of the literature, that's awesome. You should reach out to me. I'd love to be your friend. But that's not what this conversation is really about. It's more about Dakota. And that's how it should be. These interviews are meant to be about the artists that I'm speaking to, the practitioners I'm speaking to. And over time, that sort of becomes this larger narrative. That's the idea. So keep that in mind. If you're really not into that, that's fine. But please tune in. I think it's cool. Dakota is a really interesting person. He's a very inspiring artist to speak to. And I'm just happy that I get to share this with you. So finally, here we are. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you at the end. What can you tell me about Grit City?
Grit City is definitely loosely based on LA. For a large part of my comics and the world that I created, I've been working on this comic since 2016. And for most of it, it took place in the middle of nowhere in the desert. And it was very liminal. And you only saw people would come and go to this one gas station in the middle of nowhere. And then eventually, when I wanted to kind of expand the world and explore more things, I started pulling and collaging different elements of LA into it. And I think what really inspired me was when I moved to different neighborhoods that were east and different from where I initially grew up. That really like opened my eyes to all these different places in LA that I wasn't used to, and that kind of made me feel uncomfortable at times, or just like kind of changed my perspective on the city. And I think what really catapulted Grit City though was during 2020 and like kind of amidst the pandemic and coming out of it. And I would go on these like kind of aimless drives around town, and I would be driving past stuff that I've driven past all my life, but noticing like some drastic changes, like, a venue that I once played at that now is totally shut down and graffitied and looks like, I was like post-apocalyptic. And so Grid City was almost a way to was like a strange amalgamation of like, I don't even recognize where I come from anymore. Like I feel like a foreigner in my own hometown. So in a way, it kind of highlights in this more extreme cartoonified version of like the alienation, and like some like I do exaggerated maybe versions of some gritty parts of LA. Um, but yeah, I'd say that's where it mainly comes from. I'm also super inspired from a lot of like these neo-noir movies, and I'm a sucker for any movie that has an alleyway scene, and like those alleys always inspire me. And yeah, that kind of those kind of scenes in movies and whatnot have factored into this world.
That's so interesting. The alley piece, what stands out to you about alleyways in
Okay,
movies?
so I moved to this apartment in Koreatown. It was like on the Koreatown Silver Lake border. And my apartment, I was on the second floor, and I was like at the back of the apartment building, and I like could see outside my window to the alleyway. And like it was like a front row seat to just like some interesting characters that would kind of hang out there. I lived next to like this poultry place, so I would hear like chickens all the time. It was like just not a really pleasant environment, but the alley was also just like incredibly stimulating to me in a way. I would just like look out my window with my cat and be like, okay, what's going on today? Like who's here? Who's the guest? And so anyways, that kind of that plus watching films that had those imagery just kind of blurred together, and it was like kind of unavoidable, I guess, to incorporate that into my world because I felt like I was kind of living in one of those movies for a period of time.
Oh, that's so cool. I love when that happens, when like just somewhere in your daily life feels really generative and you're just noticing things every single day. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Did you, when you were living there, did you take notes of things you were observing?
I was writing more songs at the time than I was like doing as much visual work at the time. So I was writing music or lyrics that were very responsive to the environment. Actually, like precursed Grit City in the comics, I wrote the song Grit City. That was like very much literal, kind of describing some of the imagery that I would see and whatnot. And at the time, I was working at this job in Silver Lake, and I would have this like walking commute. And so that walk I always felt was like such a, I was really excited to walk to work and not have to drive, but it was also such like a journey. And I always felt I was on like a little adventure, and there's all these different characters or textures or just a lot of stimulating things to take in. Yeah.
That makes so much sense. You
Yeah.
sound like a writer to me. I feel like writing, you're just always pulling inspiration from every place you go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that's why psychogeography, I guess, is like kind of embedded. I don't even really think of it as like that's a practice. It's just like a part of the art practice naturally. It's like that's what making art to me is, whatever the medium, it's like responding to whatever is in front of me and kind of going through my brain and out onto the page or in a song or yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like that also is like maybe some of the challenge of having, like, at least for me, crafting questions that feel like we can talk about this or like I'm trying not to be extractive about psychogeography because it's so integrated into the art practice. I feel like it can be hard to sort of like highlight it or feature it as its own thing. So I appreciate you sitting here and like having this full conversation with me about
Yeah.
it. I would love to know a little bit more about Grit City. So, what about the city felt essential to include when you were creating it? And what sort of like organically came about when you were beginning the process of visualizing it and putting it into some kind of structure?
Well, a big component to me was like the main character. He was like traveling throughout the city by foot. And that was really like natural for me because a lot of my like adult life in LA, I would have a lot of these like really epic walks around town. And I still do that today. And I think in LA, it's especially strange and different compared to New York or Chicago or San Francisco. And like the thing I really wanted to highlight with Grit City was the liminal aspect that you feel as a pedestrian in LA. And that like there really are like, you know, these very specific streets that like are full of people and whatnot. But once you get out of those little oases of restaurants and whatnot, you're like the only person on the road for blocks at times. And that aspect I think is so interesting because like we're in this like famous, very populated city that you can also feel completely isolated. So that was like probably one of the biggest or just natural things for me to kind of explore. Um, in it. So I have the main character, his name is Ricochet. And the first time I introduced Grit City, he's leaving the house for the first time and he can't remember when he last left the house, which was like kind of mirroring coming out of the pandemic a bit and like going from being sheltered into the world. And so he's like reintroduced to the city for the first time and everything is looking a little off and different to him. And anyways, that kind of was just mirroring my reality of like coming out of the house and like kind of getting my bearings right. And again, and like reestablishing like what's familiar or where are my new go-to spots or what happened to this block or what is this building now? And like the past and the present kind of all blurring. And yeah.
Do you feel like, because I know when cities change like that, people who reside in that neighborhood where the change is happening can feel a lot of complex feelings about it. And I'm just wondering, what is your initial response when you notice something like that?
Well, I feel I'm pretty used to as far as like change in the city. Like I have like a unique experience maybe of like I've lived in a lot of places, like been very nomadic just within LA. Like I've lived in like over 20 different addresses. So change in LA is I guess natural to me, but my main reaction is just kind of getting bummed. I think I've noticed is like uh just the amount of old things that just get closed and it feels like more and more rapid uh here. And so that's just my main reaction. It's just like bored and bummed of like, really, we're gonna put up another like Target with apartments on top instead of like keep that cool building with some nice carves and human design in there instead. Like, so yeah, that's how I feel.
Yeah, I get that. I feel like people grieve different aspects of a city, and I'm wondering, is it usually like cultural aspects of it that stand out? Like, oh, that's a place that I had like memories and me and my friends used to hang out, or is it more like oh, I drove by this place all the time, it was familiar. Like what stands out to you when you think about a place like
I think I think visuals do. I think just like design or like there is a personal attachment, but there's also like a visual component. Like feel like I get or I said it before, like I guess the amount of modern things that come in just it bores me. That's like my biggest reaction. I just get like I like old things, and I've noticed it in the last, like, 5 years or so, I feel like there's, like, a war on old things or so it's I guess a lot of it is cultural. I noticed Sunset Boulevard, kinda from Hollywood all the way into, like, Echo Park is, you see a lot of closures, and it's a little worrisome. It's just like, okay, this city's famous for being culturally relevant or a place for culture to come out of, and it's like, feels a little weird to maybe that some of these places could be going away. Yeah. For like what purpose? So I just, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. I think it also makes sense that you notice the visual components of a city or like the especially older buildings and like older style architecture. I feel like LA is just full of it. So it's like there is a grief to that, losing them.
yeah. Like one of the strangest things actually that sticks out is also like movie theaters. Like, it's like
Yeah,
a lot of movie theaters are just like sitting empty, and we're like, okay, this is Hollywood, but we're gonna like not have these famous old theaters be open to the public. Like, yeah. So that's another reaction. Yeah.
I think movie theaters is a huge one. There's so many in LA too. I feel like you could make a whole like project or map just of movie theaters and like how they've changed and yeah.
Totally. Yeah. So that bums me out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so when you were creating Grit City, what about it felt familiar and what about it felt new to you?
I guess the newness of it felt was this new kind of desolate feeling. Like I couldn't help but be kind of doom and gloom about it. That it felt like post-apocalyptic. It felt like time had moved really rapidly. Uh, Somehow, like in a shorter amount of time, or like, I mean, it felt like 10 years had passed, and I was like, wait, where am I? Like, it felt all of a sudden in a way, if that makes sense. So that was the biggest change. It just felt like this like more thriving thing suddenly came to like this abrupt stop. Um, and that's what really inspired me, like to this kind of rundown component that like I was really attracted to of like, I guess like these buildings representing something in the past. So they're all like kind of tombstones in a way. Mm, yeah.
It's really well said. I think that comes through a lot with the visuals that you've created. And I think you have captured that like grief element or sort of like desolate element that you're describing from the pandemic in the visuals. So it's just really well done. The last question about Dusko specifically was what, or like, have you defined the relationship that Ricochet has to Grit City? And like, what does that look like?
Well, yeah, he's a guy that like he wakes up one day and just feels like time has passed him by in a way. And that's a component. And then I think the other thing is like I've moved around so much in LA, so I wanted to explore kind of with him not having a car and him be traveling by foot. I guess in a way, what it is, or what it symbolizes of like this kind of fish out of water scenario is like, and what I've learned personally in like my life in LA is like, even though you can like, you're in the same city, or even though I'm in the same city this whole time, uh, Ricochet in this in Grid City, he's starting over in a way, his life. And so I think what I'm exploring is how like your relationship with the city can change dramatically with time. And like you can feel at home one day and then feel like you're a tourist another day. And so I think that aspect, that's like maybe the underlying theme with Ricochet and Grit City is the juggling or jumping back and forth between familiarity and foreigner, um, and kind of just again like rebuilding a life kind of.
I think it's great. That's awesome. And it really does mirror so much of what we've talked about in even in our previous conversation and sort of like how psychogeographies unfolds. It's there's never like a finish line. It's just always progressive, and there's always a new corner to turn, and then all of a sudden nothing looks familiar, and then maybe it's a very non-linear journey. So I think that's really cool that you've captured that.
Yeah. I think the city is interesting when you drive around too. Like in my head, I feel like I have like a map and there's still things to discover. And I feel like there's these little like blackout parts of the map of the city that eventually become illuminated when you go to a part of town that you've never been to before. And then like you connect the dots and you start seeing the city a different way. And so that always fascinates me too. It's just like how there's, like you said, like there's the relationship is always changing. So you can always learn new things too.
Yeah, that's so cool. Okay, so I would love to ask you about a little bit more about the atmosphere building or like creative process. So I'm just curious, like, what components have helped shape how you think about atmosphere in your music? Or like, what are your guiding intuitive pulls when you're creating atmosphere?
Well, okay. So for like visual stuff, I think I'm generally really attracted to these liminal spaces because I view them like these like empty stages that I'm like, anything can happen now. Like that's why I loved setting the comic in the desert because that was so open ended to me as far as like anyone could show up, the genre could ever change. So that kind of atmosphere really that's how I build atmosphere, I guess, or is these blank spaces. And I like these kind of spaces that like could on the surface feel bored or boring or uneventful, but there's like endless potential of like what could go down there. Like the genesis of the whole comic started from being really bored at my service job. That was like this really sterile room, and there was like no art on the walls. It was white, and so I worked there for a while, and like I just like was so bored all the time that it like let my brain kind of go to another place to start imagining this other uh world as well. Um, And then when it comes to music and atmosphere, I think my brain is so wired to movies. And that's just how, like, even with making music, I just kind of think in movie terms. And so oftentimes when I'm making a song, I'm thinking of it from the perspective of kind of giving a score to whether it's a place or if I'm thinking about something personal of my life. But the it's like giving a theme to this thing or this place. So that's how I create atmospheres, like thinking of, I guess, the context, and then that's what inspires like the sound that exist in this space, or what does this space sound like? Is how I view it.
Wow, that's so cool. So it is very personal. It's very much about your perception of how you've experienced a place and sort of just constructing a world based off of that.
Totally, yeah. It's like right now these days I'm mainly focusing on instrumental music too, which lends itself even more to scores. But in the past, I would write even with lyrical material. I would get like fixated on a space. And like I have a song called Beverly Everything that's just like there was a point in my life where Beverly Hills and Street Beverly, and I had this dumb job at the Beverly Center. And so like that word was just like that dominated my life, and my whole LA relationship revolved around Beverly. And so I was like, I need to give that. They was just like asking for a song in that way to me. And that's how it goes for a lot of songs for me. It's like my relationship with the space, and eventually there becomes a soundtrack to it.
So I'm just curious, when you're thinking about these like themes that you notice, how do you start crafting them? Do you like journal a lot, or how are you like keeping track of them? Because they seem
I'm a
so
chronic
intimate.
uh notes app user, like all the time. And so I have like too many of them, and I'll just like make a million of them throughout the day based on like there'll be a note of like these are all the things that I saw that I thought were interesting on my walk. And sometimes when I come back home, I'm like, what the hell is this? Like some half of it may not be. But that's how I'm kind of intaking a lot of information or just like jotting stuff down to kind of work with. And I think all I really need to be reminded of is like some sort of word or title that would be inspiring, especially in the context of working on like instrumental music. So I'll have like this title that can represent, you know, this one space or whatever. And that's in like the back of my mind with them when I'm making this song. Or sometimes it's retroactive. Sometimes I make a piece of music and then it doesn't have a title, but I'll consult my like notes and then there'll be like an obvious kind of realization. It's like, oh, do you know what? This totally sounds like this. And the dots connect like that.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. I assume there must be some kind of note-taking process for you because the things that you're noticing and clearly sensitive to are so like nuanced and some of them are very like tiny, minuscule observations and some of them clearly like bigger life events and things like that. So I was just curious.
totally. I mean, that's what I find fun about living in this city still is like I really enjoy exploring both the places that I feel are like oversaturated, like, you know, the tourists go to like Beverly Hills or Hollywood Boulevard. But I find that really interesting to come to as just like a resident of the city. And then I also like going to places that I feel like no one will want to explore or that feel incredibly dull, but I need to go out of my element to kind of rewire my brain and see, is this going to be inspiring? What about this street block and like in the valley? Like, am I going to discover something here? And so, anyways, yeah.
That's really cool. So, when you do go explore, is there anything that you have to do to like mentally get into a zone where you're noticing things, or does it just sort of happen organically? Like, I'm gonna go on a walk and just see what happens.
It's like, I think that can be said also for a lot of my art making process too, whether in all mediums, that it's really going in like with a blank brain, no agenda. That's where I feel like I yield my favorite results too in art is like when I'm recording a new song, the less calculated I am, the looser I am, the better the results come on guitar. Or oftentimes, you know, I'll have like some story ideas that I have on notes, but the real magic, I think, when it comes from when I'm writing like a new comic is I'll just sit down and start drawing a new page kind of just casually of whatever feels right in the moment. And then I'll like stare at him like, okay, like, so I drew this guy standing here for some reason, and that will kind of be the catalyst to then I'll start thinking. But everything comes from a place initially of hopefully of lack of thought, and that's where then having that empty brain, I can like be open to whatever, you know, to push me in whatever direction.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's very collaborative, like you and whatever this like intuitive force is that's sort of shaping the story.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. Um, yeah. So I'm wondering, is there a physical place in LA right now that you've been gravitating to? And what about it stands out to you?
That's a great question. Because I do go through a ton of phases. For a while, I would complain about where I currently live, that I felt like I was like, oh, I can't walk out my door and like go grab coffee. Like I live in like a pretty dense neighborhood. And I was like, this isn't like New York or something. I was like, but lately I've been totally challenging that and like walking out my door and like, I'm going to walk as far as I can right now to go get a coffee and I, and so I'll just go on these like random routes each day. I'll pick a different route to walk. This is all around Pasadena. And I'm particularly inspired or just into walking around the Arroyo. And I really like just the landscape and the imagery over there. So at the moment, that's where I've been spending my time, wandering Pasadena and seeing what happens like when I just like leave my house by foot and not even like drive myself to go walk somewhere.
Yeah, that's a great way to do it. And I think also having like a destination a little bit. It's like, oh, I'm gonna go get coffee. So there's like a purpose, but you still have all this wandering room in between you and point
Totally.
B. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, that's awesome. So how many neighborhoods in LA have you lived in? You said you've lived
Y-
in like 20 different
House,
houses or
yeah,
addresses?
yeah, all over Westwood. I grew up in. I lived in the Valley. I lived in Century City, Koreatown, Glendale, Pasadena. There's more. Yeah. Venice for a second. Yeah. So I feel like I've seen a good amount of the city.
Do you have any favorite neighborhoods from those?
I have a soft spot for Century City. I find that area specifically really interesting and that like sticks out. I don't know if I have any like super favorites, but Century City, I think I always come back to and I always get the same feeling when I go walking around there too. I think partially because there's cars can't park on the streets there. So it's like very sterile. And if you go walking around there at night, it's like really clean and it feels like you're walking on like a movie set of like what a city, like a fake city almost. And so there's something quiet and calming and interesting to me about that zone.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, there's something also about walking around at night versus during the day that is totally different in so many different ways.
Absolutely.
Atmosphere, pace, like the people you encounter, the circumstances you might encounter.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. Do you feel like, do you walk around at night often?
Not as much these days, but I do agree when the sun is down, your experience with the city is totally different. And actually, that's what was actually the whole crux of what generated the comic. I was working these super early morning shifts before sunrise at this coffee shop. And a lot of like the characters that show up in the book are pulled from reality and were people I encountered like before sunrise. And I just was really fascinated. I was like, these interactions are really strange. This is a really interesting time to like exist that like not everybody's awake yet. And so it's just like this limited population that's around at that time of day between 4 and 6 a.m. that I found really interesting. Like I would have like, this 1 block walk from my car to the coffee shop. And sometimes I would be like really spooked or there'd be anyways, all that kind of fed into the world very much so. So I do feel yeah, nighttime or early mornings. Yeah, the city's different.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like it can also generate a lot of different like ways of thinking at night. There's so many different components that are going into how someone might experience a place or a moment in time, like where you are mentally or how the rest of your day went, or just like what the local culture is like, all of those things.
Absolutely. Like it's interesting exploring like a dense, like very popular area that's in the daytime that's like totally shut down at night. Or the opposite too. Like it's interesting when you like go by a venue in the daytime and at night you're used to seeing all these people and then it's a completely different energy in the daytime. So I like seeing that duality.
That's really cool. I think it's really special to have a sensitivity to that and be able to channel it into art and like sort of expressing it, these pieces that you're collecting all the time, these like fragments. So that sounds like writing to me for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah. Let's talk about your video, I'm So Famous.
Mhm.
And in that video, you feature some parts of LA where you grew up and used to live. And I'd just love to hear a little bit about the song and what made you want to choose to feature that in the video. Yeah, anything you want to share about that.
Totally. Well, so there's like two versions of the song. There's this original song, and then there's this remix that my friend Jordan Roundtree made. But the initial song came about, I'm So Famous, was like a total, almost like a joke. And it was kind of reflecting on living here my whole life and living in also Hollywood, where it's just obviously associated with fame. Uh, and kind of feeling like at one point during the period in which I wrote it, which was like 3 years ago or something, I had felt like I couldn't like escape myself. Like any day I went out for a period, I would like run into someone, whether it was like high school or from one show I played. And it just felt like wherever I went, or some coworker or a customer that I had rung up years before. And it was always just, I was just like, couldn't avoid like a reminder of myself, no matter where, whatever part of town, like there would always be someone. And so it was this joke of like, I'm so famous, but I'm not famous. But it was like this joke that was just, it was that I was unavoidable. And so that's where the song initially came from, and kind of like wishing to be anonymous also. That was the real goal. So even though that's the title of the song, the goal was like, I don't want to, like, can I just go out and like just be quiet? Like, or something, like not run into the past. So that was a huge part of it. And then, anyways, then now there's the remix of it. And I think the remix definitely informed a lot of the visuals, which was all made by Priscilla Mars, who's like a regular collaborator of mine, and she's a photographer and cinematographer. And her work is also very psychogeographic and very responsive to LA as well. And so I think going with the remix theme too, she focused on uh, these environments and locations in which like that had kind of reference to my life, of like certain streets and certain parts of town from a certain era. And in itself, it felt like a remix of my life, of in a way, and like going with the track itself too. And it was kind of like blurring the lines of now and the past all at once, in that way, and kind of recontextualizing the relationship, which is very real, as far as like, okay, here I am now, and I'm going to go visit this part of town that I lived in 10 years ago or something. And like, just kind of that coexisting of different eras at once. Yeah, that was the overall kind of genesis and running themes with it.
That's a really interesting way to frame it too. I think this like different eras of your life and sort of revisiting through different lenses. That's really like such a beautiful statement. And I think that is what really stands out to me about your relationship with LA, that you've been there as many years as you have, growing up there and sort of having like these different layered experiences and then being able to return and have these like memories attached to them, or sort of seeing through different lenses and being able to almost like it sounds like you're rotating between like past lenses and future you lenses, right? Like,
Totally, the lines get blurred, and it's a weird thing. And I think that's why that track, being kind of personal, that's why that song was really interesting or fun to like also pass off to other people. Like, okay, let me get this friend to recontextualize the music altogether. And then let me have this person that does visuals to completely like recontextual. So getting two fresh perspectives on something that to me, maybe I only see one way, or is I'm bored of it or dull of it. It's dull to me. So it's nice to get like these new points of views to make me see something different. Like, oh, now I hear my song differently, or I see familiar environments completely different because it's being shot by someone else, not it's not me. So yeah.
that's so good. I love that. I think that's so important too, because especially with like, I think people who are drawn to psychogeographies have like, there's the concept of flaner, which is like the person who wanders the streets alone. Basically, like there's like this isolating element to it that can feel so, you're sort of in your own world all the time, or like it's hard to like connect with other people and being able to turn it into art, like what you're experiencing because it's so personal, and then like sharing that with other people, I think is so cool. Um,
Yeah. I'm very grateful for collaborators like that. That's what keeps things fresh for me for sure.
yeah, yeah, that's really cool. Okay, so I would love to know a little bit about your relationship to Griffith Park. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, if you can tell me about how that, like, what do you think of Griffith Park, and like, how did you start visiting it? I know you're from LA, so it's sort of like maybe a harder question to ask, but I'm just curious, like, how has that relationship changed over time?
Actually, so it's pretty specific. I didn't grow up going to Griffith Park. Like I grew up further west, so like nature was more was like the beach or like the Santa Monica Mountains. So I didn't really have that deep of a relationship to it other than like the field trips to Griffith Park or whatever, to the observatory. Um, it was again during the pandemic. I was living in like a relatively tiny apartment in Glendale, and I lived really close to Griffith Park. And so that was like the best place to get out of the house and go to. So I kind of treated it like my backyard at the time. And like if I wasn't at my apartment during that era, I'd be there exploring different trails. And there was a couple trails that I became like super attached to, and again would be like find these ones that I'd be like the only person on for a whole hour or something. So I really found that like luxurious and peaceful. And after being like trapped in that era, uh, it was like just yeah, so Griffith in general just represents this like really nice. I view it in this really positive way, and it's always something new to explore. Like I still don't think I've hit all the trails, and I've been going there for like 6 years now. So, anyways, I find Griffith to be a very just chill escape.
Like, yeah, it's so big too. Like you said, like there's so many trails you can explore, and you can't really conquer the whole place very quickly.
And I became eventually fascinated with just the overall history. Like Griffith has gone through quite a bit of changes. Like I love that there's a lot of old structures that are still there. There's like parts of trails that will have like these concrete walls that just totally look like ruins. Of course, there's like the old zoo that's just like still there, but there's obviously no animals. You can like, I like hanging around there because you can see the history, and it's just, it's stimulating.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of like liminal space in Griffith Park because of like all those remnants or fragments from the past that are still there. There's like this evidence, but it's not super obvious, so you can just stumble upon these things and have no context. And then but the more you learn, it's just like you keep building on it. It's so interesting.
Yeah, and I think another concept of that, or another component that makes me fascinated, is like how you can be in the middle of this like fully modern city, and I love that you can really detach like really quickly into nature and feel cut off temporarily. So I find that also really appealing in that way too. And then when you need to get a coffee and water, you just head down.
Yeah, definitely. There's a specific part in Griffith Park that you feature in your music video for Jade's Dilemma.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about that video and song and what part you chose to feature and why?
Yeah, actually, this part of Griffith Park like appeals to me on a lot of levels. I've started going to this trail. It's Mineral Wells is what it's called, and uh, it's like a super steep incline. So it's a really good workout. So I've really liked going there, and it's very unpopulated. So it's really peaceful. And when you get up to the top, there's like it's a recycling facility up there. So there's like some structures there. And I was always fascinated by this one like silver silo that stood there. And so it's featured in the music video, and it's also featured in my comics, that silo. And it's where one of the main characters, like I made it that he like lives there in that silo. Like that's his home. And so eventually like from like 2020 and just going there frequently, just kind of viewed that as my fictional second home. So I just kind of, you know, made it very personal, just all fabricated too. It was just so like, in my head of just this place that just like was a safe, chill place in nature just to frequent. And it was like kind of this blank canvas, like I talked about before, that I was like, anything can kind of happen here. Why not a cartoon character live here? And then eventually, um, I realized I'd never had utilized it in like a music video or anything. So, with this latest song, it felt like just the right environment, uh, to finally, capture it and put it in context with one of my instrumental songs.
Awesome. I love that idea of like making one of your characters live there in this real place.
Well, I guess it made sense to me at the time because like the character was like a loner, and I'm like love, and like there's a ton of examples and stories of like Dracula living on this, in this castle on the hill, or Edward Scissorhands, coming from this place, or even Pee Wee's Playhouse is like this one dude up there. So when I saw that and I made that realization, I was like, oh, this is my version of that. Like this silo can be that for me, which got me really excited.
Yeah. So when you find these sites that sort of feel generative to you, how long do you typically spend hanging out there? Is there like, do you have like a wide capacity for just sitting and hanging out there for a long time, or is it like passing through or
It's more passing through, but it's frequent visits. That's what it becomes. It's not that I hang out there for a while, but I'll just become obsessive, and that'll become the new part of my day to day routine until I get tired of it, I guess.
gotcha?
Yeah. So there'll be these different phases of my life where I'll just, get fixated. And, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like you would like physically walk there and go check it out for like 10, 15 minutes, whatever.
Yeah,
Document
I'd be
it
able
if
to do
you do.
my like hour hike or whatever. But and then when I discovered it, I was like, okay, I gotta keep going back there.